Things fall apart and tend to shatter. This is the Civ Battle Royale X Season 5, Episode 25, Civ Pain Piñata. Breaking character for a moment. Hello, I'm Bucky, or BV, or Anarcho-Balkan if you're on Reddit. And I'll be your fill-in / trainee / monthly audio narrator. It's my first time doing this, so I'm both excited and nervous, so I hope you forgive me if the quality is not up to snuff. Anyway, without further ado, let's get back to the narration. Hello! Welcome everybody back to the Civilization Battle Royale, the coldest, most spectacular show on the planet. I'm your host GDT1706, and I'm here today to deliver you all through a cylinder of glory and guts, of blood and burning, and of excitement and wonder. The only show on Earth that can ever bring up such wondrous, rapturous feelings. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, and leave the bad reviews for the end of the episode. Church of the Cylinder. For our first OC, we have to thank Orange Chrissy for providing us with yet another episode of Church of the Cylinder. This time we break Arch's heart by showing how incompetent Teotihuacan is. Maps. And for the second OC, we can showcase the map of the cylinder done by Sonic Fan. She puts in lots of effort weekly to make these things, so you better thank her for being a premier map maker. Money. And once again, thank you to every single one of the Ko-fi donators to the CBR. You are the champs who managed to make this whole project fun. Flawless. As a PR, I must highlight a large milestone in the X5 rankings. For the first time ever this season, a Civ managed to achieve 0 standard deviation. The Klingit have secured the top spot with not a single dissenter. There is only one word to describe what the Klingit are doing right now. Dominance. Whether they can keep this up in the midst of the time of monsters is another question, but regardless, they are very good. Tactical failures. Sir, the New South Wales fleet stands at the precipice of Java, stated Jetan, aide to Admiral Taiji of the Great Northern Fleet. The generals on the front are, let's say, calling you an incredibly special individual, whose exploits will be remembered time immemorial. Good to see my wisdom is appreciated, because we are not sending the fleet. Our guard is forever in position to defend the capital against the northern enemies, whom are still the primary concern of the Kongsis. Java can hold. The fleet stays north. They say the military is completely depleted, that the southerners are about to make a landing party. If they move in, the walls of Mindirardi are too depleted to mount a defense. And so, that's for Guifang and Zhengai to deal with, not me. It's not my fault they failed to implement the basic principle of war, as instituted by this book. He slammed it on the table. Its title is How to Fight War is Good. Foreboding Storm. The Tang Empire sits on the precipice of doom. On the surface, things are all hunky-dory. Good food, good production, a golden age for technical innovation. But to the north, there lay an existential threat. The Roran. Once a plucky second fiddle, the wriggling barbarians of the north have amassed a gigantic army, ready to run rampart across the undefended lands of Tang. Currently kept at bay only by rumors of mechanized flying machines, burnt of black sorcery and capable of mowing them down from the skies, they nevertheless become a tangential threat to the Tang, and a potential finals contender. Kermit, it's actually happening. After many episodes of inactivity, it seems like the Aures are finally back in the game with their attempt to finish off the Papal States. Having quietly declared the war last episode, the Aures are now moving in the full might of their military forces to eat up the Cheese Pope. Of course, it may take a little longer than expected. Any advance into the Adriatic is blocked off by the Hyksos, and despite an overwhelming advantage in every possible metric, the papacy has the advantage of hill tiles, and the Aures need to take naval landing penalties to try and take their cities. Still, this war is really a question of how far rather than if. Die another day. As expected, one Shude laid defiant after all the battering by Anishinaabe. It has a 2-tile entrance that are hill tiles and is otherwise completely surrounded by mountains, rendering it almost completely impenetrable unless the city gets brought to the black first by artillery or planes. The Anishinaabe currently do not have either, and so the Ponkas survive. We also get to see the Ponka's unique unit, the Washabe, a crossbow that starts with cover and upon 4 combats gains +1 movement and weakens adjacent enemies. If the Ponka were in any situation other than this, it would be a game changer. Crush, crush, crush. The Yanomami Shavante War has not turned quite to the favor of the Shavante. The Yanomami have continued to pour on the hurt of the already battered Shavante, setting Abelina to the yellow with a seemingly endless force in tow. The Shavante are putting on a decent resistance, muskets and knights hiding about to hold on to their last cities. But it may not be enough. Congress of Charlatans. We take a quick look at the World Congress, led by Lanfang with their 7 delegates and with the sub-following suit with 3 delegates due to how Civ 5 Congress works. While any logical person would maybe try embargoing New South Wales in Luo's position, he and his bureaucrats have been bribed by a generous gift from Taizong, additionally supplemented by gold from an unknown source, leading to their primary proposal to the World Congress instead being a proposal to embargo the Roran. Manifest Destiny. The great visions of the Longhouse of Kachana Akor conjure what fate the Klingit have for their future. A grand, sweeping empire spreading sea to sea, an endless tide of glory and violence. The Great Raven's word will be brought to the heel of all of the world, the apotheosis of all their faith and strength. And with their statistical dominance in North America's state, they seem more than capable of fulfilling this vision. Tear down this wall! The Great Wall has been a thorn on the side of New South Wales for centuries. Arguably, it has been the only reason why NSW hasn't ran buckshot all over Australia already. But John MacArthur is a wily individual. Knowing he can't pierce the wall, he has instead claimed lands behind the wall, forcing the walls to magically warp around the new border and reducing the amount of distance NSW troops have to cover to reach Bunuba cities. Of course, Jandamara is not best pleased, but what could he do? Settle them back? Preposterous! They do lots of things. We take a small gander at Estonia, putting a focus on great engineer Frank Lloyd Wright, best known as a designer for unique open-air and holistic buildings. Estonia has been fine. Once a bit of a joke, they have managed to develop a decent spot for themselves in the middle of Europe, with pretty good science and mid-tier stats that serve to be high tier in the Mickey Mouse continent. Brutality. Following the lines of New South Wales, we witness an even more brutal citadel imposed towards Phoenicia. The Circassians have completely enveloped Tyre, leaving it a tiny shell of its former self. Poor Hiram, bullied into total irrelevancy. Remember when Phoenicia looked good? Pepperidge Farm remembers. No contest. And we get yet another brutal citadel with Pakistan completely cutting off Mangalo and Chanapatna, all but ensuring that these two cities would get conquered promptly in a conflict between Mysore and Pakistan. Mysore has been thoroughly ripped geographically by Pakistan over the past few parts. Their strong stats are increasingly become irrelevant in the face of just how disjointed their empire is, and how vulnerable it is to Pakistan in particular. We shall see soon, however, if this doom ring is justified at all. Something is happening here for once. For the first time in 25 parts, something actually happens in the Herero-Luba war, with Luba flipping the Herero city of Okakarara with superior line infantry and lances. Of course, there are ample reinforcements ready to try to take back the city from the Herero side, But still, this has been more action than these two bickering idiots have gotten against each other for so long. Telahun Ginjit. We move on to a good look at the Kipchak core. A fine enough civilization with a fine enough carpet, though it is rapidly aging compared to Scythia, Ket and Karachitai, and not as expansive as one would hope in this part of the game. King Crimson is from there. They're pretty cool. They made some pretty good songs, some of which vaguely have a bit of Central Asian influence, though IRL they're all white and either British or American. Baroque AF. We take a look at the lands of the Portuguese, who have carved a decent empire for themselves, all things considered. While still a bit positionally disadvantaged, and not exactly top tier by any means, they have managed to carve a good niche for themselves around West Africa, a good enough empire to weather storms from potential invaders. We also witness Dietrich Buxtehude, a Danish composer who is rather unknown to the average person, but who is directly responsible for birthing the music of Bach and Handel. Baroque. Hacking like butter. We take a quick gander to Scotland, where we see the unique Scottish unit, the Hackbutter. The Hackbutter is purchasable with faith and gains plus 25% combat strength when next to barbarians, a very niche buff that in the CBR only really works with ideological rebels and the Scottish UA, which only spawns rebels near enemy holy cities, of which the closest ones are a continent away thanks to Western Europe failing to found a religion. Regardless, this gives a small edge to Scotland, who has been the highest ranked European civ, mostly due to stats and everyone else in Europe being awful. South Pacific. We take a gander on the New South Wales Pacific, a good little holdout for our already powerful nation. Clawed towards their hands through a mixture of conquest and settlement, it is a very prosperous and quaint locale, a perfect engine for further development, and a strong reminder of what makes an SDUB strong. High dev cities built strategically with just a sprinkle of military competence. Pace yourself. The Potiguara continued to batter on the remnants of the Guaycuru, slowly but surely approaching the three-city core on the Rio de la Plata. What had long ago looked like a laughingstock of a stalemate had quickly transformed into a cleanup job against a once solid mid-tier. The final goal of the Potiguara is to reclaim Cachoeira, but in the meantime they are more than happy to put Laguna Los Pasos in the red, readying a multi-pronged and multi-branch assault to exile the Guaycuru to a Chono reservation. The Night Watch. Rembrandt van Rijn looks up upon the easel. The subjects of his next masterwork pace diligently, a small guard of the Kalmar musketeers. The orders are unclear on their side, bicker and repudiation on what they are actually stationed there for. But for Rembrandt, this was perfect. In every stroke, in every touch, every showcase of agony and disappointment in the human experience. A masterwork in the making. Sheer heart attack. The Auris invasion of the papacy is taking a little longer than anticipated, the state of the Mediterranean and the nature of Italy resulting in Via starting out with a more conservative invasion plan. But this brings us to the featured musician. They need no introduction. You know who Queen is, and you know what they sing. And you know, it's quite ironic they serve the Pope as a king. Maybe Freddy is quietly singing Catholic diatribes about the virtues of cheese? There will be no escape. The Tlingit continue their relentless and brutal assault on Teotihuacan by battering Bafaja, bringing the city to yellow from a strong naval offensive. The northern reaches are no longer being contested and the Teotihuacan looks spent. A potential doomsday being rumored around in the streets of Teotihuacan. Of course, Spear Thrower Owl will never admit to such failures, afraid he may be of the current state of things. Operation Contain the Worm. It seems that Taizong's lobbying has paid off in spades as the Roran get embargoed. Unlike the Tang embargo, there's really not that much upside to Roran's embargo. If anything, I would be concerned that their large military, combined with a lack of external trade routes, would result in them potentially spiraling into bankruptcy. Cat suffered that for quite a bit. Perhaps Juliu Muglugu will suffer the debate. What the fuck is that spelling, JDT? A thumb on the scales. It also seems that Lax's suggestion of historical landmarks also passes, as we get a quick look at Scythia's core. They will not benefit much from this proposal, as they don't actually have any world wonders in their empire. And all things considered, it still looks very sparse, a remnant of their bankruptcy and their mediocre economy. Nevertheless, there remains plenty of potential to go out west and sweep Europe. Remind yourself that this is potentially the best civ on the continent. They seem cool. There really isn't anything interesting to note on Anishinabe's very decent core, so I will instead make a note of the great musician highlighted here, Laibach. Considered pioneers of Slovenian darkwave and industrial, they became a highly acclaimed band, famous as dissidents to the Slovenian SSR, and then as national icons of the country. How fascinating. Audio narrator's note here, Slovenia wasn't an SSR, it was just an SR. Because, you know, Yugoslavia, not Soviet. All quiet. We take a look at Bangladesh, fresh off the war with Lanfang and having kept Hong Sawatoi despite the city being a shell of its former glory. Like many civs in the cylinder, their circumstances are just fine. They are kind of stuck between a lot of mountains and a bunch of civs equal or stronger than them. But this really underappreciates their core, much like how the featured great musician, the rock band Big Star, were highly underrated until Rem openly stated them as an influence. With the way Lanfang is moving, there's a good chance that there may be a route out for them from their current predicament. But for now, they lay in relative peace. Biapo. Biapo. We get a brief look at the ongoing Biarmian-Viatkan War, a very petty and inconsequential conflict that serves zero purpose other than as a humiliation ritual for both sides. Osnoviec is blockaded on the Viatka side, while Umpi, recently refled by Biarmia, remains somewhat vulnerable to Viatka assault should they bring up melee units. Of course, there are none. After years of happy rule, needing to consolidate power and bring further efficiency to bring forth Estonians' rise to power, Lennart Meri decides on a series of bureaucracy-cutting measures. No longer is he to be referred to as a king or consul. He is the very spirit of the nation, a ephemeral ghost unchallengeable in the nation's search for glory. Estonia adopts autocracy. Bad vibes. Sir, Mindirardi has fallen, as have Lara and Bakuan, with Shanjudaya in tow. What? Where are the reinforcements? We have bagged the Northern Fleet for months now to come south. The order from High Command was for them to stay still until the moonlight touches the sun. Apparently a call from Taiji and Field Marshal Zhen Lang. They fear a Cebu retaliation or something. But the moonlight will never touch the sun, dismayed General Guifang. Caspian of Nothing. We take a quick look at the Caspian Sea, the perfect parlay between a variety of different civs, none of which have been too exciting last episode. Bactria, Scythia, Circassia, and the Kipchaks all coalesce in this one corner of the world. We do see that Scythia's and Bactria's reinforcements here are looking rather thin, with a giant Kipchak horde building up. Could this portend to an opportunity for the Kipchaks? Apocalypso. The Yanomami continue to wail down upon the Shavante, bringing Abelina to the yellow. But they're not the only ones who are wailing. Across the city, the hopes of the people were pinned on one man, Bob Marley. The only bit of hope and happiness found in the bleak siege and the burning fields, he sings his reggae classics such as Buffalo Soldiers to comfort the people of the Shavante in a trying time. Skulls and shells. we take a look at the Pacific, at the borders of the Caral and Teotihuacan. Still at war, you wouldn't be able to guess from this corner of the world. In this corner, a veritable calm ripples through the Pacific, the people of both sides having had more than enough of the skirmishes that have permeated the region for centuries and being happy to simply be. No need for more skulls in the ocean, just some happiness fishing and a few ceremonial skirmishes. Finally, we get word from our recruit Peshgal Daramesh that the Susquehannock are plotting against the Onondaga. Could this be it? The Onondaga in the near future? What are these borders, man? We take a look at Central Europe, where the borders make me want to hurl. Serbia has managed to citadel large portions of Wallachia and the Hansa. France managed to absorb most of West Germany. The Hansa is expanding into Wallachia, and despite all of that, Bremen is being held together by a one-tile corridor. I guess even when not in-game, the HRE holds its spirit over the region. The thin purple line. Ocacarara falls to the red with the Herero Lancer ready to reflip the city. However, the Luba are not going to let the Herero make any easy progress on the northern assault. A strong cannonade concentrated on Kabongo, using advanced field guns, ensures that Herero advances remain somewhat minimal in the grand scheme of things. The whole thing really reeks of stalemate, if I'm to be honest. Classic. Oh my god! The Aures successfully capture Rome, parking several privateers into the area to ransack the city. Of course, with papal musketeers nearby, holding the city is a different matter. But it is clear that the levels between the David and Goliath are simply too large to effectively contest. Failed flank. Rather than continue the previous strategy of assaulting Ribe, which is still in the yellow, the Hansa have opted to launch a naval invasion of Copenhagen, sneaking a small company past the Baltic. This will not turn out well. Copenhagen is much better defended, not having had any damage dealt to it yet compared to Ribe, which is on the yellow. Does Wulenweffe simply have an IQ too high to comprehend? Eternal flips. We take a look back at the Ethiopia-Zazao War, where matters have come to a standstill thanks to both sides being exhausted. Adama is in the yellow and unreinforced in the light of Zazao military might, but Fatika is also in the yellow and may fall to a concentrated Ethiopian assault. This war has turned into a giant slog for both sides, with no end in sight, and little progress either. Fresh Guaycuru. Laguna Los Pases falls to the Potiguara. There is still a strong concentration of Guaycuru troops to try to contest the city, but needless to say, things do not look good here if you support the Guaycuru. The shrimp will come to devour all. Little Mac. The Charagua-Susquehannock War continues to stand at a deadlock as the Susquehannock Navy fails to make headway southwards. While Sus is superior in almost every conceivable metric, the Charagua hold in pride a very important advantage. Their navy is better than the Susquehannock one. As a result, they have been able to punch way above their weight, since Sus has to, use the navy to reach the Caribbean. The Lost Colony. The Lost Colony of Murisk suffers another ejection from their lands, as the Anishinaabe sees their copper deposits. The only real reason why the land has value. The people of the land despair. They have been doomed to wait in servitude to a motherland who don't even know they exist. Sitting in the tundra, freezing and broken. Running. We look on over to Pakistan, fresh off the elimination of Sumer. A strong, sturdy empire with high technological advancement, good city growth, and good just about everything. The world is in their oyster. We get a quick look at Dexy's Midnight Runners, who I swear I always get in every episode I narrate. They are best known for Come On Eileen, the ever so famous one-hit wonder. They're pretty cool, I guess. Grasping. Despite limited personnel and the dogged refusal of their northern fleet to move, Anfang has managed to successfully flip Lara and Mindirardi. Java seems like a losing battle, however, with plenty of New South Wales reinforcements, and Lara isn't the most convincing hold either. Regardless to say, this war is not over in the slightest. Two-front hold. Teotihuacan successfully flipped back Zacataca from Caral, but this may be a short-lived success as the Caral still have their naval units prepared to flip. La Esperanza also is in the black, with a line infantry to flip, but the Teotihuacan core is empty. The Tlingit have done great damage to generations of Teotihuacan people, a great pain that may never be recoverable. Spiritual overflow. Rome briefly fixed back into papal hands before becoming Aures territory once again. This insolence does not please Dia. The only real question is if Pope Julius is threatening enough to dedicate a few hours of her day building a curse towards, or if she'd rather just continue stat-checking the papacy, slowly but surely crushing their hopes and dreams without the need of spiritual intervention. #FraudWatch? Remarkably, Laguna Los Pasas has not fallen to Patiguara yet, with Guaycuru setting up a strong salient just by the city to successfully contest it in the face of overwhelming Patiguara numbers. Is this proof of strong Guaycuru resilience, or is this proof of Patiguara being bad at war? Diversionary tactics. Okay, Jürgen legitimately pulled a big brain move here. The assault in Copenhagen was just a diversion for the real assault, a renewed pincer on Ribe. While not as many Kalmar units have been diverted away from Ribe as Wollenwerfer may have hoped, there has been noticeable progress on Ribe. Meet potential encirclement! We move on over to see the absolute state of green Ukraine. A series of Tang and Itelmen citadels have resulted in a situation where the majority of their empire is held together by one tile. One more citadel from either civ and half of their empire is a sitting duck. Not that it matters much anyway, since Tang literally has citadels next to Khabarovsk and their army is incredibly sparse. Man, I can't wait for them to die. The year of living dangerously. A letter laid upon the desk of High Admiral Taiji. To the esteemed High Admiral Taiji, I hope your ship gets sunk. Signed, the Ghosts of Java. All according to plan, we give up Java to cultivate our auric nodes and develop character. All according to plan. The defense of Okakarara. Surprisingly, the Luba managed to hold off the Herero at Okakarara, hanging on to the city through grit and luck. Paja Jovanovic, realist painter extraordinaire, was commissioned by the Luba to paint a stunning portrait of the heroic defense. A showcase of blood and glory, of power and pain. A little bit exaggerated, of course, but what is propaganda if not the exploits of the brave chained to galvanize the will of the cowardly? Let's groove! The public exhibition of the defense of Okakarara has proven to be enough for the Herero to balk under the atrocity of their actions, ending the umpteenth war with Luba and yielding the war its first change in territory, I believe ever. In spite of this, the end of this war is celebrated all throughout the Herero, with Earth, Wind and Fire releasing the seminal hit Let's Groove, in commemoration of the end of the war and the purported victory of the Herero. Just ignore reality. Wait a second. We witnessed the Kalmar Great Prophet, NRA, which are the Scythian priestesses and soothsayers who were highly influential in their society. In fact, I have to wonder if they didn't just capture one from Scythia. That is their UGP after all. And it just converted into a normal Great Prophet for some reason. Regardless, the foreign priestess has been called for some strange exorcism rituals. Strange curses have befalled all who have tried to besiege Rakvere. Increased clumsiness, lost property, incontinence. The NRA's job is to exercise whatever curse there is and ensure the Kalmar can actually siege down the city. she brings upon with her heaps of hemp and totems to bear. By the light of the Lord and the ancestors, may the soldiers of Kalmar be blessed. When the soldiers left, she then muttered, and may Scythia grow from this affair. Back to the ship! We witness the primary reason why the Susquehannock are failing to break the Charagua. Their navy is backwards. The Charagua bring forth galleons and frigates to plunder the eastern seaboard, with Scalulian and Tessinur coming under blockade. The Susquehannock reply with tepid fleets of galleasses and carracks, and able to contest a much less advanced enemy in every other front. Props to you, Anacona. You kinda cooked here. It only gets worse from here. Bafara flips to the Klingit, with the northern reaches of Teotihuacan's former empire seemingly out of reach for any sort of reclamation. And that's even the end of it. Sakhawitznal is in the yellow, with no army to contest. The majority of Teotihuacan's military are instead focused on repelling the Caral threat, or stuck on the Caribbean with no method of going west to contest the Klingit. All in all to say, doom approaches. Bad times. Uh-oh, as it turns out, the Yanomami are going down to break down everything in the Shavante. Abelinia and Maraiwatsede have been seized by Yanomami, with the Shavante army not in any position to contest. The end is nigh for the Jungle Boys. The last stand is to be made. Disappearing trick. It looks like Ethiopia is dedicating a large amount of resources towards invading Seychelles, Somalia. And who are we to contest them? The Seychelles certainly aren't trying to contest this army, just chilling by and not even preparing any sort of military force to meet the Ethiopians. I heavily doubt this force will accomplish anything other than dying and losing time, but sure, Zara Yaqub, you do you. Yet another wonder. Taizong adds another wonder to his collection by building a Christu Hegenjo, Cristo Hedendor, whatever, in Luoyang. He himself doesn't really know what it represents, but it's big and gives aura, so he approves of the project. The wonder provides minus 7% culture policy adoption cost and gives plus 5 culture per turn. A decent pickup, but one which may not be as relevant in this stage of the game as most civs have already maxed out much of their policy tree. With ideologies, though, could be impactful. Mapu, hi! Humabon sits from the top of Borobudur, keeping his wits about him. While they certainly are no longer slouches by any stretch of the imagination, the Cebu are still underdogs, statistically and positionally inferior to much of their neighbors. Dogged grit and opportunistic warfare have gotten them very far, and one day it may get them much further still. But for now, he just wants to reap the spoils of his labor. His mortal rival Luo Fangbo is ripping himself apart due in large part to his own incompetence, a just revenge for the burnings of his possessions. Not so peaceful. The Pacific Corridor sees an actual flip as Teotihuacan takes control of Mataveri, a small relief in the face of the overwhelming losses to the Klingit. While this has been a violation of the informal ceasefire brought upon for many years in the region, and the local inhabitants are devastated to find looting and pillaging upon their lands, Caral doesn't seem to actually do anything about it, their naval carpet not being present to contest. Romance Dawn. Deciding that if they can't beat them, they'll just steal from them, the French have settled Rouen and Nice within their newly obtained lands in the Rhine and Bavaria, solidifying their stranglehold over Western Europe, in spite of mediocre stats and pushing the Hansa into an even bigger corner than they already were. Worse, the Hanseatic assault on Ribe seems to have petered out, the Kalmar Gallias replacements successfully shutting down any attempts at frontal assault. Wurenweffe appears to be trapped in the closet, and the parents are coming. Ave Maria. By the virtue of a strong mainland presence and the grace of God, the papacy retake Rome. Whether they can hold on to it is a different question. The Aures have readied a strong armada and landing force just off the Tyrrhenian Sea, much stronger and much more advanced than anything the papacy can muster up. There may need to be a lot of prayers to the big cheese for them to get out of this one. It just keeps going. Sakhawitztal falls, but the Teotihuacan have managed to set up a defensive line to potentially reflip both cities. They are also sporting new shiny rifles, a step up from Klinget's current line infantry, a potential innovation that may help turn the tide a little bit. Maybe they have a little more fight in them than I thought. Yes. An IQ too high? We take a brief look back at Cebu, where it seems that Humabon has plots against the Karankawa. Yeah, I don't doubt your competence, Humabon, but I heavily doubt you can get there, buddy. Shades of a forgotten past. As Ethiopia continues their fruitless campaign in Somalia, we get to see the main conductor of said military operations, Alp Arslan. You might not know this or have forgotten this, but once upon a time, Arslan was an active participant in a CBR. He led the Seljuks, a mediocre civ that was just kinda there for the most part, getting bullied by Parthia and Palmyra. And I suppose he has taken his expertise in self-immolation to the front, because this affair is humiliating for all sides. Table flip. The entirety of the Sumatran outer islands fall to New South Wales, alongside Sebawi. It has also seemed that the Lanfang High Command has determined that they cannot hope to contest or retake Java, and having gone mad at the sight of the entirety of their army, including new and shiny riflemen, being stationed north where there are no active dangers, they are instead following Taiji's and Zhenglang's example, sitting still and letting New South Wales take over everything. Ribbing. Ribe looks like it might be in active danger once again. It is incredibly mercurial, the state of this endless assault up Denmark. One day Ribe is in the yellow, the next the Hansa assault has become smoke. Nevertheless, Oliver Hazard Perry, older brother of the more famous Commodore Matthew C. Perry, and a legend for defending Lake Erie from the British, believes that this time things will be different. Perhaps some sappers to deal with the naval bombardment, and a swig of courage. All he knows is that they cannot give up. Rakatak-tak. However, while Ribe looks in danger, the Kalmar Union are making progress in another front. It seems recruiting the NRA has worked wonders for the Kalmar, because Rakvere is finally taking damage and in the yellow. Commanded from the north by Disguise Extraordinaire and Shuhan General Gao Xiang, it seems slow and steady progress under the Knight has proven to be enough to make progress in flipping the city. Dios mío! A double whammy of bad news hits the papacy. First, the Aures managed to reflip Rome. Secondly, the French have settled Bruxelles right by their border, utilizing a series of brutal citadels to get right on the doorstep of Benevento. While the Pyrenees Mountains makes them less vulnerable to the big blue blob than the Hansa, if France were to come back for round 2, this time heavily doubt they'd fail due to skill issue. JDT, I think that's the Alps. No comfort for you. Sensing the changing tides, Bob Marley makes a very, very bold and controversial decision. Not wanting to die in an occupation of his native Shavante, he instead approaches the 15th Yanomami Infantry Brigade. Take me with you, and I shall bring your people to the wonders of reggae beat, my friends. Enamored by his singing and dreads, they quickly take him into their ranks, leaving the Shavante without a soothsayer for their demise. NRA. We get a proper look at the NRA on this slide. NRAs are unique great profit replacements that plant a unique resource of hemp, aka cannabis, when expended for a holy site. They also are strong combat units, healing stacked and adjacent units for the cost of their own HP and negating city combat penalty costs. Should the war come, a strong battalion of these weed-smoking priestesses will prove to be a powerful advantage for the Scythians, especially since they can potentially completely negate the disadvantages of a cavalry-heavy comp. But for now, this particular NRA is more than happy collecting various special herbs and smoking them to the moon. Nice. Fight the power. We take a big look at Circassia, an outside contender that has quickly captured the hearts of the people. All around, they have a decent core covering the Caspian, though expansion routes outside of the Middle East may be a little difficult. We get a look at early hip-hop pioneers Public Enemy, best known for their seminal album It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, with its hit Bring the Noise and the hit Fight the Power. In many ways, this rowdy, rebellious, and scrappy group feels like a good representation of Circassia in the Royale. Cruisin'. We take a look back at Macaveri, where we have a good look at what may be the first highlighted ship of its kind, a Caral cruiser. Cruisers are powerful industrial-era ranged ships, the upgrade from frigates, and a strong advantage for any aspiring naval civ. Regardless if Caral can remember to bring a melee unit, Macaveri can quickly fall back into their fold. Better than you. However, the cruisers are not the most advanced ships on the cylinder. That title has to go to Tang's destroyers. Seemingly completely bypassing ironclads, these bad boys are emblematic of the modern era. Traditionally where the late game starts, but with F-dub, it's more of where the mid-game starts to come to a climax. A true danger in any naval engagements. All in the Pacific better keep their eyes out if they want to not get steamrolled by the dragon. High treason? We take a brief look at Lanfang's northern reaches, where everything starts to make sense. The veterans and leaders of the southern front are being sent out to die in meat grinders. Instead, frivolous promotions are being sent to nepo babies who have done nothing of value and have no experience in combat. Instead of fighting tooth and nail in the front for the good of the nation, they are being stationed in the northern garrisons, where combat is scarce so they can exploit their position for monetary gain. It just keeps going. Rome flips back to the hands of the Aures, but once again the papacy have a force of musketeers prepared to flip it back. This song and dance is not one that can go on forever. At some point the papacy simply will no longer have the reserves to hold an advantage. But until that point arrives, Dihya must simply seethe as she slowly chews on her toy. Finally you spelled her name correctly, JDT, thank you. Kushan Kings. We move on back to South Africa, where we are back to a regularly scheduled nothing ever happens after the brief excitement of the latest Herero-Luba war. We also witness the Luba Great General of Kanishka the Great. Leader of the Kushan Empire during its zenith, he spurred the Bactrians he originated from to come here, where he will take a lofty post sitting about and sipping mimosas until the time comes for war, or when the Luba order him to Citadel the Herero. Humiliation. It has never looked more bleak for Lanfang. Mao En has fallen to New South Wales, with a large reinforcement brigade coming up from the land down under. Alongside field guns, skirmishers, cavalrymen, and frigates, we also see NSW's unique Rum Corps, a rifleman replacement that begins with EXP equivalent to the happiness gained from luxuries and which spawns a luxury upon taking a city. The southern brigades are trying their best, but they are exhausted, and there have even been scouting parties sent to Minghuang for potential assault. Things are dire. And throughout all that, Admiral Taiji still sits on the bow of his deck, a statue in human form. The orders will not change. The Ravens swoop. The soldiers of Teotihuacan storm back into Sakha-Witznal, a triumphant victory for the 3rd Cavalry Brigade. But for Captain Pacchini, this was of little relief. He had heard the stories from Kuhane. Large black ravens of unknown origin, but clearly Tlingit wizardry of some sort, dropping munitions from the sky and sweeping their men with concentrated rifle fire from their beaks. And from the War Council the command was clear. Look to the skies. He paces above him. It is all clear for now. Is he even qualified? We witness yet another shot of the Hansa, thus far failing to take Ribe, where we come across a most peculiar great general. Jose Maria Arguedas, from what I can tell, is not a military leader in any way. He's instead a Quechua poet, considered by some to be one of the greatest writers humanity ever birthed, and a man whose glory has been overshadowed by the fact his work is barely translated to English. If this sort of person being assigned to as a military leader in the Hansa, it's no wonder their military have been very subpar. Reclamation Day. The day the Potiguara have been waiting in bated breath for centuries is finally coming forth. The walls of Cachoeira are crumbling. Lost in a war of humiliation many eons ago, the nadir of their empire, Felipe Camajao is more than overjoyed that the 21 Pop City, a great blemish on his record, is coming back to him. Laguna Los Pases is also secured, and the Guaycuru carpet is inferior and thinning. His revenge is coming. Swoosing down south, in an unexpected twist, it seems that the Tlingit have had some unit to spare for a quick little romp around the Teotihuacan Pacific. Our rather sizable fleet has encircled Umma, all but ensuring that the city will fall to Tlingit hands in a very short period of time. And if Spear Thrower Owl isn't careful, he may just lose more than one city to the Tlingit in the Pacific. Pain every day. The Teotihuacan assault to the north has been repelled, the brave soldiers unable to deal with the Tlingit plains devastating their morale. Whereas the Caral continue their assault on the south unabated, surrounding Nthakataka and assaulting Waka. Adrian Smith, IRL builder of the Burj Khalifa, has been assigned to build up the defenses for Waka, put through any plan possible to prevent assault. But it's a desperate effort of wish casting. There is nothing one man alone can do to prevent the fall of an empire. All that's left is to try and to rekindle the ashes. BuilderCon 1941. We take a look at the city of Shuri, a far-off but very effective colony of the Cebu, where John Dukas, who IRL probably represents one of about 10 significant Byzantine military leaders and diplomats with the same name, takes note of a unique phenomenon. Brought about by boredom, stress, and a longing for companionship, many workers take off on a grand fleet toward the east, trading goods and tales of companionship, potentially en route to Hawaii. Bound together in camaraderie, they call this grand exodus BuilderCon, a nod to the convening of their united needs and interests. The Mutiny. It appears that several of the individual captains of the Lanfang Northern Fleet have gotten sick and tired of the corrupt orders of craven idiots that dominated their ranks, and have instead gone on the offensive with General Guifang to regain their losses from early in the war. Fresh battalions of Lanfang rifles and artillery storm southwards, flipping Sebawi and Maoen and placing pressure on the lost cities in Sumatra. While the military has decayed, this is proof enough that Lanfang is not yet lost, and the fact this didn't happen earlier and required active rebellion has finally gotten the suspicion of Luofangbo and the Kongsis. Raven see, Raven do. Following the footsteps of their Raven patrons of the Tlingit, the Itelmen are obliged to follow their governmental structures and customs. Considered top-down executive branches, sidelining of the traditional councils for more power for Harchin, a cult of personality, and a strong veneration of the military alongside its integration into everyday life. Before one even notices, the Itelmen have adopted autocracy. Roots. Bloody roots. And with the conquest of Wadeze, the Yanomami finally conquer the unshakable Shavante, putting an end to a mediocre but incredibly plucky civ that people have written off since the start of the game. called by the game runner herself as cursed in a way no other Civ has ever been, the Shavante put up a good fight, all things considered, staying active and scrappy throughout quite a lot of the game, punching Caral, Potiguara and Yanomami in the mouth and holding well despite getting thoroughly outsettled and cornered. But alas, that simply wasn't enough in the face of strong and dedicated competition. F. How did we get here? I'm sorry, Anacona, I was unfamiliar with your game. Somehow the Sharagua have completely reversed their fortunes from this war and are actively besieging Tessinir. The raid can probably be a bit more supported, but the very fact that Old Shihes has been reduced to the defensive is a humiliation against the Civ we have all counted out. What a wild war this one has been. The execution of Admiral Taiji. High Admiral Taiji, for the crime of gross incompetence and negligence, you're being sentenced to death. The barrister read out. Your complete unwillingness to compromise in your strategy of aura cultivation has proven completely unsuccessful and unfounded on any actual military theory, and your reliance on the instrument of subterfuge disseminated by the enemy known as How to Fight Wars Good to inform tactical strategies is worthy in of itself as a charge of treason. You shall be dropped into the ocean with stones, much like how the thousands of drowned men of the Lanfang Republic, who could have supported our current objectives in retaining Sebawi, Sumatra and Java, objectives we would have never had to place had your gross negligence hadn't resulted in absolute failure. Do you have any statements? Taiji cleared his throat. History will prove me innocent. Splash. Eating the Eater. Zazao successfully secured the area of Lake Chad, putting siege to Adama and Gondar as their bounce back from being ganked by Luba is nearing completion. Meanwhile, Zara Yaqub has seemingly bet everything on the Somalian gambit, not sending a single unit to contest Adama or Gondar. Unfortunately for him, Franz Albert René has realized that the invasion force isn't just a meme, and has sent an actual army to protect his holdings in the Horn of Africa. What this means is that an already difficult task for the Ethiopians has suddenly become all but impossible, and they are throwing away their cities for nothing. I didn't even need a proper curse. Even without the assistance of any neighbors of the papacy, not that France and Wallachia would really do much, it seems that the Aures have secured Italy and are on cleanup duty. Rome is fully reinforced with no papal units in sight to flip it, and Ascoli and Benevento are taking fire with Pontecorvo slowly being encircled by the Aures line infantry. Somehow Umma has not fallen to the Klingit yet, and with the garrison set on the rest of the Teotihuacan Pacific, something has become clear. The expeditionary force sent out by the Klingit will not be enough to do significant harm to Teotihuacan's holdings in this corner of the world. Umma, however, is a lost cause. It's not if, it's when. Rise of the Horde. Ates has been called a variety of names in recent years. Washed, craven, incompetent, lazy, corrupt, and he has finally had enough. He gathered the Scythian banners back together, banding together a fast-paced army of unstoppable cuirassiers and lances, supported by NRAs, cannons and line infantry to help burst down cities when it comes time to it. And then he makes the call to this great host that the time is nigh. The greatest force in Scythian history assembled since the subjugation of the Vyatka. Tonight, we ride to Tallinn. The cheers were rapturous. Speaking of the Vyatka, they managed to flip Umpi off screen. Unbelievably, they are still fighting the Bjarmians. Parade of the Wooden Soldiers. Watch out, folks, it may finally be happening. Ribe is in the red, with a strong contingent of Hanseatic cuirassiers in tow to prepare a flip. Standing behind them is great musician Paul Whiteman, an accomplished jazz composer. he puts forth the composition Parade of the Wooden Soldiers, a motivational and critical piece critiquing army formations and encouraging the brave soldiers of the Hansa in their endless march to Ribe. Finally! After what seems like an eternity, the Kalmar Union finally flip Rakvere, claiming an enclave that never should have existed and ensuring that Scandinavia's borders are slightly more palatable. The curse is exorcised. And best of all, Ribe isn't even flipped yet. Trades. Uma falls to the Klingit, but Teotihuacan, in return, reclaim Fakataka. This may be a bit of a false trade though. The Karal still have a strong force ready just offshore to continue raiding the city down to the dirt. And the Teotihuacan thus go further on the back foot. Undeserved. What comes up must come down. And it seems the Charagua are going to falter. The Yanomami, sensing blood in the water, have invaded them, and unlike last time, the Charagua Navy is too busy ransacking the eastern seaboard to contest. Buckle up, folks. This is about to get ugly. Things stop happening. The Vyatka-Bjarmian War ends with Vyatkan victory and humiliating Bjarmian defeat. The Vyatka managed to reverse the Bjarmian gains from previous wars and even come out of it with Umpi to spare. Meanwhile, the Bjarmians are now decidedly stuck in the Arctic, having lost a war to the one civ in the region they should have beaten. Could a prophesied Vyatka comeback be coming? Audio narrator's note. I'm pretty sure Koloperem started the war in Vyatkan hands, so technically this is a city exchange type Thai tank buster. We take a look at Japan's eastern holdings, where reggae and ska pioneer Prince Buster is on tour, singing words of wisdom to the Japanese people. More intriguing, however, is the Japanese army composition. Japan is seemingly the first civ in the world to field land ships, a significant step up for the cavalry line for almost any civ and a big power spike that may confer great benefits in future wars. Of course, naval or aerial advancements would still be preferred due to Japan being, you know, an island, but any step forward is a good step. The rally. With the execution of Admiral Taiji, parts of the Northern Navy are finally being sent down south to deal with the threat imposed by New South Wales. And not a moment too soon, Guifang's rally has petered out. Swaths of ships, cavalrymen and rum runners coming in from Australia to hold the line, while Ming Huang and Dong Huan Hiu take damage. Lara and Kuala Sepata still remain in Lanfang hands, but their grip is tenuous. Good tactical warfare is needed to ensure survival here. Ignorance is bliss. The Ethiopians continue their fruitless offensives eastward into the Seychelles, throwing muskets and cuirassiers to die in either the Ethiopian highlands or in the assault of Mankawa. Meanwhile, Zhao makes a much more fruitful offensive to the west, putting Gondar in the yellow with plenty of support to ensure taking the city shouldn't be difficult at all. Doomsday cometh. The streets of Teotihuacan are rife in strife. The people are marching in anger, sticking soldiers to sticks and burning houses and stores. The dogs have been pockmarked by flies, and the steps of the Grand Palace are awash with blood. Spearthrower Owl sighed. He had done what he thought was the only option, peace with Klingit. Further warfare will be foolish, with the Klingit mechanical ravens raining death from the skies, and their superior discipline and troop quality overrunning even the hardiest Teotihuacan troops. But Sheikish demanded a price that is absurd to the highest degree. A price Spearthrower Owl paid to prevent the end of the empire. But had he done it or not, the house was rigged from the start. The Klingit have requisitioned every city north of the Atoyak River, alongside the major villages of Yashmutal and Inishbofin. The time of Teotihuacan as a major player is over. Though they survive, they will never again be a true major contender in North America, with losses too big to ever come back from. Meanwhile, in Kachana Akwa, the celebrations are jubilant. They have done it. sea to shining sea. The feasts went on for 12 days and 12 nights, and by the end, Shakish only knew one thing: it was not enough. There's still lots of work to do. Relentless push east. The Aures continue their decimation of the papacy by putting Ascou in the red. Is it a Scully? The consolidation of the Central Mediterranean all but guaranteed for Dihya. This war has been nothing short of a shot in the arm for her confidence and bloodlust. And maybe, just maybe, this is the start of a renewed offensive. Be patient, I'll wait. The reclamation of Cachoeja has taken a little longer than expected, as the Guaycuru successfully repelled the initial Potiguaja offensive in spite of dwindling resources. The city falling should still be a foregone conclusion at some point, but with the carpet around there, Felipe Camacho must wait just a touch longer. I want to redacted! Desfeich da sochwysla. Jodaszwe sofiochi. Od saswet, od włoszafi, od drzew I ofki, oswaszaj, ofotsaj, ofci, ludzów awci, skwasów, fyswys, wczytsa, fyswys, kaszwys, ludzwys, laswolo. Fuck the hazardicor sears of swasha aswys. Nailed it. Rocketeer. Stepping away from the het slop of the Caribbean, we take a better look at the newly minted Yanomami Empire. With Shavanta's fat cities theirs, this is looking like a truly formidable core. The northern half of South America looks to be under strong lockdown, and the army, though overcommitted southwards, looks plentiful and modern. And helping modernize it more is great engineer Sergei Korolev, father of Soviet rocket sciences. Maybe he can ensure ultimate victory for Kopenawa's boys. The race. From this view, it looks like the Scythian invasion of Estonia is a two-way race against time for both sides. On Estonia's side, they endeavor to secure the undefended cities of Bergen and Bremen as fast as possible and then swing around to defend the core. On the Scythian side, they endeavor to break Estonia before Bergen and Bremen fall, or at least ensure there is a corridor for reinforcement for Bremen. From the looks of it, the Scythians have the advantage, with the horde converging on Tartu, Rostock and Viljandi, and Bremen having some reinforcement. But who knows? It's a wide front, and we all know the AI kinda cannot handle that sometimes. Prepped and served. We take a quick close-up at Benevento, a funny city that has the unique property of having a foreign citadel directly adjacent to it. From how the borders are built, it's impossible for the Aures to naval invade it, and they can only approach from the east. Robespierre really wants this city, man. Absconding. Ascou falls to the Aures as the papacy forces look spent. The few primitive reserves remaining have taken hold in the north, awaiting the end that may soon come. Wine and cheese will have to wait, since the reserves have been robbed by Via. Also of note, Pontecorvo can mostly be pressured on land due to Wallachia controlling the Adriatic. Meet potential UU! We take a look at the core of the Karachitai. They really epitomize a certain archetype of Civ. The decent Civ that is just hard stuck. They don't really have the geography or the neighbors to exploit and escape the trap of the Tarim Basin. Remember when Arch was glazing the Ordo cavalry? Yeah, they're still around. Noticeably less good than they used to be, but still usable. Final Gambit. Doomsday is not yet upon us, Spearthrower Owl announces to his men. We may be battered, we may be bruised, but we are not doomed. We have a plan. We shall crush the Caral with our superiority. Glory prevails for us. A rifle and a yell raise into the air as the Teotihuacan armada heads off to capture Cerro Blanco. The high city defense and Caral's presence of cruisers will make taking it difficult, but for now Teotihuacan has a numbers advantage. If they press it just hard enough, maybe, just maybe, they can mount a return to form. Will they? Won't they? Yanomami and Sharago remind us that they have a relationship off het slop, as despite overwhelming advantage, the enemy have been completely unable to do much to the Charagua, only giving love taps to Yaguana and otherwise not doing much. Okay, in fairness, 50 city defense is nothing to scoff at. But still, you have total advantage of Davikopenawa. Use it! Or shout out to the Yule settler. Collapse. While Lanfang naval reforms and the execution of Admiral Taiji have inspired a strong response, unfortunately, it does not seem enough. New South Wales simply has entrenched themselves too much within Malaya to successfully repel them out. If anything, they are mounting a further invasion, and things are starting to become truly dire. Ming Huang is gone. Sumatra is entirely vulnerable. And while the Eastern Northern Navy has mostly dispersed southwards, the Western Navy, in protest, has remained lethargic. Another apocalypse may be due here, folks. The charge. The Scythians seek to prove their value and strength by surrounding Tartu and Rostock with their whole army, a large, fast-paced composition of cuirassiers with a few lances and cannons mixed in. But they better be quick with their assault. The shades of the Scythian hordes that overwhelmed Vyatka are necessary for a successful war, with Rostock, I think JT meant Bremen here, already at the red due to Estonian naval assault, and reinforcement unlikely in the city. Speed. Speed is key. Onondaga. We end on a shot of the Onondaga, plotting to try to take over the Ponca despite not even sharing a border. In some continents, they'd be a very respectable civ with decent potential. Unfortunately, they are in the dark continent of North America, a landmass of monsters, and surrounded by two civs who are more than willing to rip them to shreds at any given time. Anyhow, that's all we have tonight on the Civilization Battle Royale. I'm your host JDT1706, and even when the sun's not shining and the birds ain't singing, I wish you a beautiful morning. And I've been your audio narrator for today, Bucky, wishing you a very pleasant time unit of your choosing. Bye-bye.